Hey everyone. I hope everyone is well. I'm going to do a really quick run through for of web scraping and just introducing you to Brian's website and package here. I think that most of you are not doing web scraping, which is a reason that I've sort of made this almost really an optional um, additional thing. Another reason is because web scraping is pretty involved and difficult and almost one off in a way that the APIs are not, and it really requires quite a bit of work. And so this is really just an introduction. Hopefully, give you the tools and some resources to get you started if it's something that you decide that you want to do later in the future. So Brian Keegan is a professor at University of Colorado Boulder. He does actually somewhat similar work to me. He's also came out of Northwestern's MTS program, and does stuff on Wikipedia and wikis and online spaces. This was with Allison Morgan for the Summer Institute for Computational Social Science, which, as you know, which is the thing that I emailed about, where they kind of do computational social science training in a couple of weeks. So he made this for his version of this of SIX is what they call it in Colorado. So that's way too long of an introduction, but this is, I think, a really nice course, and he does a great job of providing the text to make it accessible so that you can read through these, understand what's going on, and do it yourself. These are all Jupyter notebooks. So this is, where did I put the main page is at GitHub. There's a link to this on the wiki, but web data scraping is what it is. And it's really great. It's really great. So I want to go over just sort of some of the really high level principles and ideas that he talks about. And so you kind of have a sense of what web scraping is. We've talked about some of this in class, so some of it will be a reminder. But the big idea, and this is more about notebooks. The big idea of web scraping, as opposed to, and he uses that as an umbrella term, but I would say screen scraping, web scraping, I would sort of use those interchangeably and oppose them to APIs. So an API, an application programming interface, is designed to intentionally give access to a database to an outside programmer. So this is things like the Twitter API that we've been using. So it's designed it returns something like a nice JSON string or JSON object, which you can then use and interpret. It's intended for that purpose. And so the difference is that web scraping you do when APIs aren't available. And so for web scraping, instead of telling the server that you're a computer, that you're a program and you want data, you pretend to be a user. That's the basic idea. Is you pretend to be a user, you pretend to be a web browser, and then you get the data that would be sent to a web browser, and then you parse it. In other words, you grab the pieces that you want and put them in a format that you want. And so there are a few things that excuse me, that like a few principles that are helpful to do this. And so one of the things that this shows, I mean, he's using a different site, but any site on the web, you can do something. So I use Firefox, view inspect element, for example. So this is this is this web page. So it has an HTML and a body and all these divs, which represent kind of the structure of the page. HTML tells a browser how to present, data, images, etc. And so it's all nicely structured. In fact, I think Brian shows this later, that it looks like this. It looks like a tree. So there's a root, which is HTML, and then a body, well, there's a head, which says like the title of the page, a body, which has the elements of it. So those are the ideas. And so what we want to do when we're doing screen scraping is grab those portions of this HTML that we want. Again, the HTML is designed to display nicely in a browser. What we want is to grab the data out of it. So requests, the library that we've already used for APIs, also works for getting a web page. So this gets this web page, the Oscars web page for 2018, and then it just gets stored in .text. So the .text, so this is making the request, and so this is the request object, and the .text attribute of it stores the text of it. And so this is what the text looks like. This is HTML. So this is the start of the HTML file that gets sent. And he is just, looking at ranges of it. So it's basically a big long string, and you're looking at portions of the string. So that's what the HTML looks like. But instead of, you aren't going to actually try to parse the string. It'd be really difficult. I mean, you could try to do something like, every time you see something that says views field, skip 10 characters, and then if you see field content, then skip 2 characters, and then get the string up until it's span. Like, you could try to build something like that actually parses this HTML with things like regular expressions, but it's a really bad idea. So the thing that you want is called Beautiful Soup. That's the library, and it's really quite good. And so what this does is structures it for you and makes it much more navigable. And so, for example, this gets member data about the Senate and the House, and then you can make it into a soup, is what they call it. So what this does is it makes it navigable. It turns it into a tree instead of a string. And so what this code here does is it finds the tags in the soup and finds the children. And so this is kind of the first children. So it has all of this data and makes it much more accessible. And so you can do things like grabbing out information about a member of the House of Representatives is what this does, etc. So what you want to do at this point, now you're starting to get to this point. So this is the string of parties and which party someone is in. And so you can start to get to this point where you're looking for parties. So find all parties. If the text of that is D, then increment Democrats. Otherwise, if it's R, increment Republicans. Otherwise, increment other. And then it just counts these up. So it goes through all of the times that it finds party, and it counts them up. 239 Democrats, 201 Republicans, 1 other. So there you go. So that is the big idea of Beautiful Soup, which is great. And then he talks about JSON. I think that's the one thing that I really wanted to introduce you to. Yeah, is the tools that you'll use. One is one you already have, and that's requests. And so requests will get a web page, and then give you back the text, and you can use Beautiful Soup to kind of parse it. The one other tool that you may need, and this is part of the course as well, is Selenium. So Selenium is, with requests, you sort of ask a web page to just give me all the HTML. There's some web pages which are password protected, for example. Selenium requires you to, or helps, like, really pretends like it is a person, a web browser. And so it can click on a link, it can enter a password, it can move the mouse even. So it can do things like that. And so that's the one other tool that's I think really worth knowing about is Selenium. There are a few others that are coming out now that that I've heard of that are supposed to be pretty good, but that's the one I've used. It really works pretty well, and it's pretty neat. So so that's your very short lecture without too much that's helpful, but hopefully it gives you a resource that's helpful, and two tools that I think are vital to folks who want to do web scraping, and that is Beautiful Soup and Selenium. And this is a great way to learn about both of those. All right, take care, and talk to you soon. Looking forward to seeing your final projects.